Hello, my dear students. Myself, Mahananda Hiremat, Assistant Professor of English, GFGC College, Navalkund. Today, I am going to discuss with you biography of Martin Luther King, written by R.N. Roy. This biography prescribed by Karnataka University, Dharwad for BA 6 semester students. Now, let us study biography. R.N. Roy, who was professor of English, Nagpur University, describes the humanitarian mission and achievement of Martin Luther King. He draws a comparison between King and Mahatma Gandhi. What Gandhi did for the oppressed section of the Indian society, King did for the American blacks. Martin Luther King is popularly known as the Mahatma Gandhiji of the Western world. He was a black American clergyman and was the champion of civil rights and fought non-violently for the rights of the black in America. He awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. The text contains many similarities between Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhiji in their acts and deeds. Both were contemporaries belonging to the 20th century. While Mahatma Gandhiji fought for the freedom of India from the British, Martin Luther King fought for the freedom of India from the British. Martin Luther King fought for the rights of the oppressed black Americans. Both of them had common arms in their armory in the form of non-violence. As an ardent clergyman who was nurtured in the boom of church and sustained by its spiritual blessings, King believed in the equality of man just like Gandhi did. They were the oppressed blacks in America, and here there were millions of untouchables in India. India, we created the untouchability within ourselves, while in America it was enforced by the American government. So both the nations were facing the similar crisis. Both Mahatma Gandhiji and Martin Luther King stood alone as the same warriors, and unfortunately both of them being shot dead by the assassins. Martin Luther King believed in the equality of man. He hated the discrimination of the blacks who were denied their legitimate rights. The blacks have done their hard work, dirty work, and dangerous work in the mines, on the docks, and in the blistering foundries, and the fought bravely, sacrificing their lives in the building modern America, which the modern Americans are so boastfully proclaim that their country is the strongest in the world. Martin Luther King wonders, but who are the builders of such a nation, and what crime the black have committed to the separate them from the main American stream? There is the disparity of another kind. The blacks were not allowed to visit the hotels, restaurants, parks, or any public places in which the whites used to visit, and if they did so, it would be against the law. So the black lived in a total insecure compartment for which the government never bothered to listen to their pleas. In fact, the Martin Luther King was not demanding a separate country for the blacks, but he was insisting for common civil rights for both the blacks and the whites. Even the blacks were deprived of normal education just because for the reason that they were blacks. But what was the contribution of the whites in building the modern America. Gandhiji protested the British regime with the ahimsa, and so did Martin Luther King with non-violence. As a young boy, Martin Luther King, being influenced by the principle of Gandhiji, struck to his ideals. So he said, before this century, virtually all revolutions had been based on the hope and hate. But the hope was expressed in the rising expectation of freedom and justice. The hate was an expression of bitterness towards the perpetrators of the old orders. It was the hate that made the revolutions bloody and violent. And what was new about Mahatma Gandhi's movement in India was that he mounted a revolution on the hope and love, hope and non-violence. Martin Luther King wanted to share even public places by the blacks as did the whites. Martin Luther King came to national attention in 1956 when he led a boycott of the public buses in the Montgomery to protest against the segregated seating on them. A year later, after many mass arrests and physical attacks and torture and threats, the boycott was crowned with a success. Now Martin Luther King had enunciated the principle from which he never budged an inch in the face of the imminent danger. We will not resort to violence. We will not degrade ourselves with the hatred. Love will be returned for the hate. From 1957 to 68, Martin Luther King held numerous protest demonstrations in the South as well as in the North. He, like Gandhiji, fought with the weapon of non-violence. A weapon cuts without a wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. And he raised a huge army, but it was a special army with no supplies. But its sincerity, no uniform but a determination, no currency but it a conscience. It was an army that would move but not a mob, no arsenal, and except for its faith. But Martin Luther King and his followers suffered. They were abused and stoned by the mob, and slapped and kicked by the police, and jeered by some of their own men. Martin Luther King was pride of the world, and the world mourns his tragic death. He belonged to a century that is the most brutal, the wickedest since the Dark Ages, and the contrast between him and his century is a contrast between day and night. Ultimately, both of them succeeded. Here in India, Gandhiji was able to eradicate the British rule in India, and there in America, Martin Luther King succeeded in bringing an unanimity among the blacks and the whites. But as the providence calls for both, fell to the bullets of the assassins. This is the brief summary of the text. Thank you.